Alleged Parliament arsonist Zandile Mafe's appeal has been dismissed once again. Mafe, of course, accused of arson, terrorism, theft and housebreaking. This is all in connection with the January blaze that gutted large parts of Parliament. In April, 2 judges failed to reach agreement on his appeal against an earlier denial of bail, so a 3rd judge was added to the bench today, and of course that was then dismissed. eNCA's Lindsay Detlinger has been following proceedings, joins me now from Cape Town. Lindsay, so the 3rd judge, they together then reached this decision that the issue should be dismissed. Tell us more.
So, Sally, we heard about 4 hours of argument today, and quite surprising that when those arguments had been completed, that the full bench of 3 judges, as you point out, said they would be back in under 2 hours to deliver judgment. And once again, they returned with a split decision. Only this time, because there were 3 judges, there was one to break the impasse. And again, we were surprised because we then got to learn which of those judges in the last time the matter was heard last month, which of them thought that Zandile Mafe should, under very strict conditions, be granted bail. But the majority judgment today was that this application be dismissed, that he remain behind bars. We know that he returns to the Cape Town Magistrates Court next week to face those charges that you have read out there, and to be served an indictment before that matter is then transferred to the High Court for trial. But the judges today saying they would at a later time provide reasons for dismissing that bail application today. But as I said, 2 against 1, that he remains behind bars. Here's Judge James Lukuleni, who led the bench today, explaining that he was in fact the one who would have considered granting bail to Mafe, but he was overruled by his 2 colleagues.
We have a majority decision, we also have a minority decision, and I will be giving a dissenting judgment or a minority decision. And I'm going to give my brother Tulare to give judgment on behalf of the majority.
Thank you. After careful consideration of all the papers and having had counsel, I will make the following order. The application is dismissed.
I agree with my brother Tulare.
Thank you. As I said, I'm going to give a dissenting judgment to the decision of the majority. In my view, after a careful consideration of all the issues, and after a careful consideration of all the evidential material that has been placed before court, and after a careful consideration of the arguments that have been presented, I would have upheld the appeal, and I would have directed that the accused be released on bail subject to certain bail conditions.
All right, so it was essentially 2 against 1 when it came to the bail decision. You mentioned just a little earlier, Lindsay, that next week Mafe will be back in court. He'll have those charges read, and then a date will be set for his trial. What's happened to the issue of his supposed confession to arson, and the fact that he was earlier sent for psychiatric evaluation, but that was overturned?
So the issue of that confession, Sally, was a central argument today. Darlene Mpofu arguing for his release, saying that he didn't believe that it could in fact be called a confession. He claimed that his client had been ambushed into deposing that affidavit to the police officer, and then questioned how fair that was, given the fact that soon after that affidavit was deposed, the state then had him referred for a psychiatric evaluation, and a provisional diagnosis was that he was a paranoid schizophrenic. So Darlene Mpofu really questioning then whether that could be considered a confession if at the same time Mafe's mental state was called into question. And so the state prosecutor, though, on his part, indicating to the court that this is a matter that is not just going to be laid to rest. You will recall that Zandile Mafe's legal team has previously been able to overturn a ruling which would have referred Zandile Mafe to the Valkenburg Psychiatric Hospital for at least 30 days of observation. But Mervyn Monigo for the state saying today that this was really a matter that will have to be ironed out when this matter is transferred to the High Court. He would expect that this issue will again come up in the pre-trial hearings, and that there was no way that this trial could begin unless Mr. Mafe's mental state was indeed clarified. But his lawyer telling us after court that this was certainly not the end of the road in terms of trying to free his client. As we know, the wheels of justice do turn slowly, and Mr. Godler saying it could be months, in fact at least a year before this trial gets underway proper, and that this was an inordinate length of time for his client to stay behind bars, so they would not be giving up on their attempts to have him freed during the time that he is expected to stand trial. Here's Luvuyo Godler, the lawyer for Zandile Mafe.
We are coming all the way from Magistrate Court, and I think we have made 4 appearances here in all. And in Magistrate Court, for purposes of bail, we have made as well approximately 3, if not 4. So it has been quite a very long way for ourselves. And we will then now sit and reflect comprehensively to the decision of the court today. But I am inclined to indicate that, obviously indicated that we will appeal. And if it needs us, after consideration of the judgment, if it needs us that we still appeal up until the last court of the land, we will surely do so. But I can tell you right now, it's still not over.
It's still not over, and it's back in court next week for those charges. Thank you very much for that update. eNCA's Lindsay Detlinger in Cape Town.